30 years ago, a phone rang in the dark, a masked figure appeared at the door, and horror cinema was never the same again. The Ghostface killer did not just terrify audiences, he rewrote the rules of the genre, turning the slasher film into a self-aware, razor-sharp mirror held up to pop culture itself. Now, in 2026, the franchise that started it all is back, and this time, it is bringing everything full circle. Scream 7, the seventh installment in the iconic horror saga, is set to hit theaters on the 27th of February 2026, distributed by Paramount Pictures. What makes this entry unlike anything that has come before, it is not just the returning cast or the resurrected legacy characters, it is the man now sitting in the director's chair. Kevin Williamson, the original writer who created the Scream universe back in 1996, is stepping behind the camera for the very first time in the franchise's history. Principal photography wrapped between January and March of 2025, and sources close to the production described the film from day one as a full-circle story designed to honor everything the series has stood for across 3 decades. Unlike the previous 2 installments, which introduced a new generation of survivors centered around the Carpenter sisters, Scream 7 makes a deliberate and emotional pivot back to the beating heart of the entire saga. Sidney Prescott. After the events of her long and brutal history with Ghostface, Sidney has quietly rebuilt her life in the town of Pine Grove, Indiana. Far from Woodsboro and far from the violence that defined so much of her past. She is married now to a man named Mark, played by Joel McHale, and she has a teenage daughter named Tatum, portrayed by Isabel May, best known for her breakout role in the Yellowstone prequel series 1883. Sidney named her daughter after her closest friend from high school, a girl who died during the original Woodsboro massacre. The weight of that name alone tells you everything about who Sidney Prescott has become. But grief has a long memory, and so does Ghostface. A new killer has emerged, and for the first time in the franchise's history, the target is not Sidney herself. It is her daughter. Tatum is now the same age her mother was during the night everything began, and the new Ghostface appears determined to close that terrible loop. Forced out of the carefully constructed piece she has spent years building, Sidney must once again confront the horrors of her past, not to save herself this time, but to save her child. The official synopsis released by Paramount Pictures states that Sidney's darkest fears are realized as her daughter becomes the next target, and that she must face the horrors of her past to put an end to the bloodshed once and for all. Neve Campbell's return to the franchise is itself a story worth telling. The actress, who originated the role of Sidney Prescott in Wes Craven's 1996 original, was notably absent from Scream 6 in 2023, following a very public salary dispute with the studio. Her departure at the time left a visible void in the film, and many fans considered her absence one of the most significant reasons the 6th entry felt disconnected from the soul of the series. With Scream 7, Campbell is back, and by all accounts she played an active role in shaping the new story alongside Williamson. Her return is not merely a casting decision, it is a creative statement about where the franchise believes its true north lies. Joining Campbell is Courtney Cox, stepping back into the sharp heels of journalist Gale Weathers and delivering what is already one of the trailer's most quotable moments. David Arquette also returns as Dewey Riley, despite his character's death in the 2022 reboot, with the exact nature of his comeback still shrouded in mystery. Even more shocking is the return of Matthew Lillard as Stu Marker, the original Ghostface killer who audiences watched die in 1996, and Scott Foley as Scream 3 villain Roman Bridger. How the film resurrects these long-dead characters remains one of its most tantalizing unanswered questions. The trailer offers one electric hint. Lillard's Stu closes the footage with a grinning, "This is gonna be fun," instantly becoming the most replayed second in the entire marketing campaign. Completing the legacy lineup is Roger L. Jackson, the voice behind Ghostface's menacing calls, ensuring that Hello, Sidney still sends chills down every spine in the theater. From the newer generation, Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown return as the Meeks Martin twins, Chad and Mindy, serving as the emotional connective tissue between the franchise's past and present. Gooding described Chad at this point in the story as a man deeply worn down by everything he has survived. Barely willing to walk back into the fire, a state of mind, Gooding says, was unexpectedly reinforced by a serious illness. He battled during production that left him visibly thinner. Rounding out the cast are Anna Camp, McKenna Grace, Michelle Randolph, Jimmy Tatro, and several others. The trailer hints that Randolph and Tatro play a couple who have booked a stay at the original Woodsboro Massacre site, now operating as an Airbnb, a pitch-black comedic touch that feels like vintage Scream, while Grace and Celeste O'Connor appear as Tatum's closest school friends. Notably, absent from Scream 7 are Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, the two actresses who anchored the previous two films as sisters Sam and Tara Carpenter. Their departures set off one of the most chaotic behind-the-scenes stories in recent Hollywood history. In November 2023, production company Spyglass terminated Barrera's involvement in the franchise following a series of social media posts in which she expressed support for Palestinians and criticized Israel's military actions in Gaza during the Israel-Hamas war. Spyglass released a statement at the time, declaring the company has zero tolerance for anti-Semitism or the incitement of hate in any form, a characterization that Barrera firmly rejected, stating she would continue to use her platform to raise awareness about causes she believed in. The following day, Ortega announced that she too would not be returning, citing scheduling conflicts with her hit Netflix series Wednesday. However, in a 2025 interview, Ortega offered a more candid perspective, saying that with Barrera gone and the creative team falling apart, returning simply did not feel like the right move for her career at that point. Barrera's exit also meant that Skeet Ulrich, who had been brought back in the previous films as Sam's deceased father Billy Loomis, would no longer appear despite plans to include him in Scream 7. The chaos did not stop there. Director Christopher Landon, who had been hired to helm the project after the radio silence directing duo departed to make their film Abigail, also stepped down in 2023 after concluding that without Barrera, the story he had wanted to tell was no longer possible. It was at this point that Williamson entered the picture, not just as a writer but as director, fundamentally reimagining the film's focus and rebuilding it around Campbell's Sidney Prescott. Gooding, reflecting on the turbulent transition period, acknowledged that it required real emotional processing to let go of the version of the franchise he had first been part of. He spoke warmly of the new collaborative dynamic between Williamson and Campbell, describing it as Campbell and Williamson finding a way to create something meaningful together after years apart from the franchise that both of them helped build. Paramount dropped the first official trailer for Scream 7 3 months before the release date, and it landed with enormous impact. Beyond the reveal of Isabel May as Tatum and Joel McHale as Sidney's husband, the trailer contained a number of memorable moments, including a shot of the original Woodsboro Massacre site functioning as an Airbnb and the new Ghostface declaring, "I'm going to burn it all down," right before literally setting a house ablaze. A Super Bowl promo trailer followed, extending the film's visibility to one of the largest television audiences of the year. Together, these promotional materials have generated extraordinary anticipation across the horror community and among casual moviegoers alike. Scream 7 is scheduled for a wide theatrical release on the 27th of February 2026. Following the franchise's established distribution pattern, the film is expected to arrive on Paramount Plus approximately 2 months after its theatrical run concludes. What is happening with Scream 7 feels like something rarer than a sequel. It feels like a reckoning. Sidney Prescott is back where she belongs, at the center of the story, carrying 3 decades of survival, grief, and love into what many insiders believe could be the final chapter of her journey. For the first time, Ghostface has reached beyond Sidney and targeted the next generation of her family, raising the emotional and dramatic stakes higher than any previous installment. The themes at the core of this film, generational trauma, motherhood, legacy, and the impossible cost of survival, represent territory the franchise has never before explored with this kind of depth or seriousness. After 30 years, countless killers, and an almost unbroken string of close calls, Sidney Prescott may finally be approaching the end of a story that has defined her entire life. Whether Scream 7 delivers the closure that fans have been waiting for or opens entirely new questions about the future of the franchise remains to be seen when the lights go down and the phone starts ringing again. Now we want to hear from you. Are you excited to see Neve Campbell return as Sidney Prescott after all this time? Do you think Scream 7 will finally give her the ending she deserves, or do you hope the story keeps going? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know which returning character you are most excited to see back on screen. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure you hit like and subscribe so you never miss our latest coverage, because in this franchise, you never know when the next call is coming.